Manchester United are not playing this weekend. Presume it's internationals again. I've not checked, but it's been a couple of weeks since the players last flew to Africa and South America, so that makes most sense. Certainly, if Manchester United have been knocked out of the FA Cup in some kind of horror show, it's blank in my memory. Anyway, it's a weekend as blank as Thomas Frank's diary. Full, on the other hand, of information and opinion are Andy, Jimmy, and our betting expert, Tom Lee. Tom, what are the odds I'll be hearing about that lad not being able to cut his hair again before the night's out?
Definitely, we're going to steer away from lampooning your great friend who hasn't had a haircut for a day or two. We seem to be hearing a lot about that. The odds you need to know, we will get round to, but currently, and I'm sure lots of people will be getting very exercised about this. When we come to it, let me just say they are the bookies' prices, not mine, and they are subject to fluctuation. So if somebody's watching this a week from now, going, you're completely off your head. That's not the odds. They were when we were talking about them. Currently, to get the Manchester United job, not to get a haircut, Michael Carrick tips on 10 to 11, odds on favourite, if that's a little teaser for what you're looking for later.
Yes, it is. It is what we're looking for later. But in the meantime, what sacrifices are you and the other lads making until United become consistent again?
That's a tricky one. You could have given me a bit of warning. I'm going to retire from, even slightly ironically, suggesting that we should give it Big Sam until the end of the season. No more of that. I'm not the most hirsute of fellas, so maybe I'm going to decline from growing a Fellaini-style afro until we next win the league. That could be a day or two away, so that gives me time to get the miracle grow out. That's two for starters. I'll think of some more.
Jimmy?
Well, it's not going to sound like a big sacrifice, but as I'm in Spain, I'm going to avoid living in England. That's my commitment. That's my commitment to you. I'll avoid the rain, the cold, and everything else. So, Andy, what are you
Well,
thinking
my
of?
favourite pastime, which I seem to be renowned for now, is complaining about how much added time's added on in every United game. So I promise that I will stop talking about that. And more importantly, I might stop shaving my face until the 115 charges are brought up on Manchester City and see how I get on with that.
You will look like Nuno Espirito Santo before that happens. Well, I'm giving up creme brulee, trimming the hedges, but then I live in a flat, so it's not a massive sacrifice. And I promise to remain cisgendered until at least the time when OAP discount goes back up to 50% in the ground. How's that? Andy, I read a tweet from you earlier that basically felt like you were saying, feel like pure shit, just want Amorim back.
Absolutely not. And it wasn't meant to defend Amorim in any way. I'm just sick to death of hearing all of this nonsense about what would have happened 6 weeks ago, what would have happened 2 months ago. There's literally no evidence to suggest we would have lost that game 2 or 3-0 6 weeks ago. You know, we things weren't great under Amorim, everyone knows that, and it's the right decision for him to have gone. The team hadn't given up on him. We'd come back several times in games similar to last night. So the evidence suggests that, that wouldn't have happened at all. Forest were 2-1 down, we came back to 2-2. Leeds were 1-0 down, came back to 1-1. Spurs were 2-1 down with 10 men, came back to 2-2. So,
They've probably dropped. Oh, do you not think that they've dropped under Amorim? Probably like 10 points they definitely should have had. And if you were to substitute like last night or like against West Ham, forward for a fullback, as happened there when chasing the game, rather than what Amorim kept doing, which is to substitute a centre-back for a centre-back, those draws could have been wins.
I completely agree with that, and I'm definitely not saying that. What I am saying is that the people were guaranteeing we would have lost that game comfortably last night under Amorim, when there's no evidence to suggest that would have happened. So clearly there was things wrong under Amorim, and his substitutions in particular were terrible. But the team have fought quite well this season. The suggestion we would have lost 3-0, I just don't buy it at all.
Fair enough. We'll get on to what's important in a manager then. What's your take, Jimmy?
What's important in a manager?
Yeah, because I just think that one of those things like taking off a fullback and putting a forward on is really what you need in a United manager. And we used to really take it for granted. You're chasing a game, you go and try and win, and that's, they risk losing it. But for Euro, it probably would have been like 2 or 3-0 before that equaliser went in. But that's what we all want in it.
Yeah, I think so. I think we've all grew up with the Fergie years, and if we were 1-0 down, we would take that risk, take the chance. I mean, you could have argued he could have been more offensive last night, maybe brought on the changes a bit earlier. But what do I want, or what do I want to see from a manager? I think that's a part of it. But it was only a few weeks ago I was on a hike and I was talking to an Irish fella about who would we want to replace long term, and we really struggled. And we'll probably find out in this conversation about kind of, because there's a few things, right? Who's available in the future? What would be a good fit? What's their style? What success have they had? Are they proven? It's not a simple question. In all honesty, so I hope you're not putting me on the spot to give you an answer now. I think through this interaction, I'm going to give you a straight answer because I know who I would want, but probably not available.
All right. Well, I bet you will get to it, unless it's Allardyce, who will probably keep coming back to. I've never been fully clear on your job, Jimmy, but as far as I understand it, you're second or third in charge of the World Bank, something like that. So can you tell me, when is a cheap option not the cheap option? Like, is there a false economy in going for someone who's out of contract?
I am not a businessman, for the record, in any way, shape, or form. Let's make that incredibly clear. But I think maybe it was before the session. Someone who's out of contract will maybe be cheaper. But it depends how you look at it, right? One is financial cost, but there's reputational damage of going through another scenario where we hire the wrong manager. We lose another 18 months, 2 years on a project. So it's more than just numbers. I mean, salary wise, whoever we bring in is going to be a similar figure to what we've offered in the past. But yeah, the cost is more than numbers. And that's, I'm not a businessman, as you know, but I'd say that's true in business as well. They think reputationally just as much as they think it's financial.
No, I love it how you talk like you're actually on the board. Let's go further. Tell me about business and relationships, because this is if Amorim fell out with Jason Wilcox, and Jason Wilcox has got this power, and it's maybe the biggest role he's ever had. It's maybe the biggest role Barada's ever had. A lot of this is surely going to be about how different men get on with each other or don't get on with each other, isn't it?
Yeah, and you're not going to find out that until there'll be interviews and processes, so to speak. You had it with Dan Ashworth, right? We thought that was a good appointment and didn't work out very quickly. I think that's the thing I know least about is who Wilcox is, who Barada is, how they operate. Is that a toxic environment? Is it not? I think someone who's worked in that similar setup would make sense. Someone who's had more control, try to go into that role would be difficult. And there's going to be friction straight away. Doesn't matter what role you do, whether it's in football or not. If you're accustomed to a way of working, it's much easier to kind of ease yourself into it. If you're not and you expect more, that needs to be clear up front. But I think Ruben had a similar challenge, right? And that came, it accumulated in an outburst, right? And then soon after he was gone.
Fair enough. All right, Tom, talk to me about odds. Carrick is the favourite, and his odds have come in since he came in. What's going on there? Is that purely because he's had a good start?
Just go back a stage, and I know you're talking about what we do and don't want of a manager. It's really hard, isn't it, to sort of try and second guess what is or isn't happening at a top level. What I would say is that certainly there seems to be a sort of an element of who's the best actor, who's the best frontman, who's the best puppet to carry the whole thing along, because it's not just one person's character, is it, who can stand up with the front, the persona, the charisma, the character to be the leader of Manchester United, the juggernaut. It's who's behind him as well, which is why with Carrick, you can see that Steve Holland seems to be such a good appointment and very clued in. People keep mentioning him. Whereas with Amorim, let's not forget, I don't know what his name was, but that fat bloke in a tracksuit who used to put the cones out, who looked as if he'd been sleeping in a skip behind Amorim, who at the same time, don't forget some of those incidents at Bilbao in the final, down on his haunches, stood there, rubbing his chin, no plan B whatsoever. And of course, after that, this season in September, that nonsense at Grimsby where he's sitting cowering in the dugout at a League Two club, sort of with a, that poise of somebody, that body language of somebody who just didn't want to know. And you think, is this bloke really got the stature, the personality, the front to carry Manchester United? And particularly, let's not forget that if Mourinho couldn't do it, of all people, then my word, this is some task. So all those things to be mindful of, I would say. I'm not telling you anything you don't know, but just throwing that into the mix because, yeah, talk about Barada, talk about Wilcox, but it's Manchester United, for heaven's sake. So very, very tricky. Fast forward to the point you just made. Yeah, Carrick in the box seat, 10 to 11, has done almost everything right. Yes, you can question the timing of substitutions. Yes, you can question particular tactical nuances, if you like. But, and anyone who's just sort of parachuting into this now, excuse me, these odds that I'm about to give you, subject to fluctuation, they are the best prices with any bookie as we're recording this piece. So don't get too exercised by this wherever you are
I
saying
should
these
make clear then
prices
that
are out
any
of
graphic
date.
you might see is just off odds checker.
That's fine, because that's where I got my information from as well. So Carrick's the 10 to 11 favourite. That means bet 11 to win 10. This is literally live as we're recording. So he's the man currently incumbent for whatever it was to begin with, 17, 18 games, doing everything right. But I think the really interesting point about this, Andrew, is when you look further down that list, if it's not going to be Carrick and Steve Holland, who is it going to be? Because, and again, some of these people you forgot even existed. Some of them you forget work in football. Some of them are frankly horrific, and some of them could be really exciting. And I'm not going to give you chapter and verse because I've already talked a lot, but 8 to 1 second favourite is the outgoing Palace manager, the FA Cup winner, Oliver Glasner. Let's not forget that as we're talking right now, Liverpool might soon need a manager. Marseille do need a manager. Spurs definitely do need a manager. There you go. Glasner currently you can get a bit bigger than that price you see on screen. 6 to 1 has become 8 to 1. So he's on his way out.
Minor average, I should say. I've got AI to basically go for all the ones mentioned on odds checker and put the average on.
Well, that's a very good point because mine are the best prices. So if you shop around, the average price is what you see on that graphic. The best price is the odds that I'll mention. So you get the best of both worlds there. So between 6 and 8 to 1, Glasner. Twice that 6 to 1 is 12 to 1. A certain Thomas Tuchel, who, does he have a job at the moment? Yeah, quite a big one. He's taking England to try and win a World Cup, which won't happen. So he's biggest at 12 to 1. One man who couldn't win anything with England despite labouring close to the prize without quite sealing the deal is Gareth Southgate, who's biggest at 16 to 1. Luis Enrique, well, he's an incredible individual.
Can we go back to Tuchel before we do any odds on all these?
Yeah, of course.
Do we think that what do you think? I mean, Andy, one of the things you're famous for is that you always get pictured in away ends on all kinds of media. I think you might be head and shoulders actually above anyone else in terms of the count on that. It's between you and Jesus anyway, isn't it? Let's face it. So what would your face be like if would you back Tuchel, and would you be very angry if it started to go wrong under him quite quickly?
Yeah, I like Tuchel, and I think he'd be a good fit in terms of the the experience he's got of working for bigger clubs, what he's won, and being able to come in and hit the ground running. I think the issue with him is it sounds like he's a bit of a control freak, and given the well-publicised fallout with Amorim, is how would he fit in the current organisation and how it's set up, being potentially told who we're signing, what he needs to do, and it sounds like he's not going to be particularly happy with that. So there is a potential for a fairly quick fallout there if it doesn't settle. But I do like him, and he's one of the people that I probably would be happy with at this stage. But as we've already alluded to it, the list is pretty underwhelming. And if you were going to ask me at the start of this, who would I want? I genuinely don't know, and I don't have a strong feeling on it. What I do have a strong feeling on is who I don't want, and in particular Gareth Southgate.
We're going to get to that at the end. I will ask you the best and worst case scenarios at the end, but I think that's a really strong point, Jimmy, about the control freakness of it. And I'll preface this question by telling you that feel free to use this answer as practice for when you're asked on Stephen Bartlett's business podcast. Can he manage upwards, and is that a problem?
That question's for me, is it?
Yeah, it is. Yeah, you're a business guru.
I've never met the fella. I mean, I think what Andy's just said, just to reiterate what Andy said, I don't see him as long term. I think he's naturally, there's a lot of friction from him. I think even with the fans, I don't see him as a likable person. And I know it's not necessarily a personality or popularity contest, but it is to a degree. Can
Does
he
matter,
manage
though,
up?
doesn't it?
It does matter, of course it does. There's lots of elements to this decision, and this is why it is a hard one to decide. But could he get on with the upstairs? I don't think he would. I think he maybe will for a period. It's one of those. I think when things are going well, and it's probably true with Carrick to a degree now. Everything's humming, everything's going nicely. But that's not always going to be the case. And how do you get through those periods? And I see someone like Tuchel to not take feedback very well. I can't see it. Like Andy said, he's probably used to a level of control which probably wouldn't want to work under the structure that we have at United now.
Tommy, you're about to go on, I think, to Southgate.
Boo.
And I mean, yeah, he would not be a popular choice, would he? I think you said best odds 16.
Best odds 16. Hopefully put 2 zeros on the end of that, because anybody having 50 pence or a pound on that wants their brain testing. I mean, just, oh my God, can you imagine the thought of waking up non-ironically to read that Gareth Southgate had somehow tricked his way into the United job? It would be the laughing stock of football. It just wouldn't work. I don't care who he's got around him. Yes, he's a really nice bloke. He's like a sort of kindly uncle that you'd really like to turn up at Christmas, because he'd bake a great cake and sort of probably be quite good at charades. Would he help United win trophies and retain their cutting edge? There is absolutely no evidence of that. He was a mediocre club manager. He was a pretty crap England manager, really, with a phenomenal group of players that he repeatedly found ways to not win finals. I mean, look at some of the gilt-edged opportunities he spurned. I mean, blimey, absolutely no way. If there's a sort of a polarity and an extreme of who you do want and who you don't want, surely the screaming negative, with the absolute caveat that I'm sure he's a really nice bloke and good luck to him. And I hope he thrives in whatever he does. But please God, it isn't Manchester United manager. No way. 16-1. Absolutely not.
He's also,
On the other hand,
I
sorry,
was
go
going
on.
to say, he's also not been in club management since 2008, was it? I think. So how do you parachute a
A while
failed
ago, yeah.
international manager into the biggest club in the world, arguably, when he's not managing the club for that long? It just makes no sense on any level.
Be a very short honeymoon period, wouldn't it? But on the other hand, what feels to me like a potentially unrealistic target, but why should you dream small? Luis Enrique. What interests you about those odds, Tom?
What interests me about those odds, 16-1 your price, 20-1 you can get, depending on where you shop around. You get proven brilliance of a manager who, unlike Guardiola, hasn't walked into a perfectly honed winning machine at Barcelona. He's had to rebuild, he's had to reshape, he's had to reformulate, he's had to drive it forward, he's had to recruit, whereupon he's then had to go to PSG. Where has he done something that no one else can do? Yes, he has. PSG were serial losers who continually tripped over at the important point. Not under this bloke. They are tried and tested, proven ruthless killers, PSG. At least they were last year. Not as good this year yet. But let's not forget, they've just got deserved a sack by spanking Marseille 5-0 in the, whatever they call it, the Olympico, the Classico on Sunday. So, listen, this bloke's a winner. Whether or not, actually, people say, well, you can learn this, but he's actually an amazing bloke. He's super fit. He runs ultra marathons. He's overcome a huge personal strife in his own family life. He's just a deeply impressive man who's meant to be, I mean, I don't know him personally, but I read biographical reports. He's meant to be a deeply impressive man who is ferociously driven. He'd be perfect. Does he speak English? I don't think so. I mean, he's highly intelligent, clearly. I'm sure that's a gap that could be bridged. Would he want to come to United? Possibly not. Is he currently achieving more elsewhere? Would he want to come and work for Ineos and the Glazers? Maybe not. But maybe that's reflected in the price, between 16 and 20 to 1. But he is a formidable human being.
I imagine his name will come up again at the end in a couple of minutes. Similar odds, though, is Julian Nagelsmann, who I would never have really had on the list. Is he right to be sharing the same space?
Well, he's been in one of European football's top jobs in his early 30s. What's he best known for? Is he a shaper of football as a visionary and a serial winner, or is he a sort of funky young bloke who used to turn up at the training ground on his skateboard? Probably the latter. That might be doing him down a bit. I maybe one of the other boys is better placed to give you a verdict on him, because the Bundesliga is not something that I've got a depth of knowledge about. I prefer
I
watching
think that,
football from
given
Spain.
what you've just said, we need to go to Jimmy and ask him about what the tech bros make of him.
He does reek of tech bro, to be fair. I mean, if I can go back to Enrique, he's my number one. Like, not romantically, like as a manager, he'd be my first pick. I don't think he'll come to us. That's just a gut feeling. I'd like him to. I think he's everything we need. Yeah, he's like I say, you've already said it. He's driven. I think the other thing was the French league. No one's a toss about the French league, so he might want a new project. Whether he wants that as United, I mean, it's possible. So maybe I'll hold a candle and hope he does. As for Nagelsmann, I got an instant irritation to him. It's like a mosquito bite when I saw Nagelsmann. So I think I'd struggle with him personally. But again, whoever comes and not turn things around, but keep United going forward and bring success, I'll swallow any dislike I have for him, and I'm sure I'll warm to him over time. But I've kind of forgotten about him, in all honesty. Nagelsmann, when he burst onto the scene, to use that phrase, and then he's with the German national team now, I think. So post World Cup, he'll be available probably. But yeah, I'd rather not. I'd take him over Southgate if that's any way of, ordering this.
I think that if it was Nagelsmann and he turned up in that jacket he wore when he got thumped by Solskjaer's United, then the shots in the next day's media would just be of Hoddy just trying to get to him to attack him. Run me through, Tom, quite quickly the other few names who are in that top 10 and what you think.
I will, of course, yes. So beyond those, odds something in the region of 20-25 to 1. You've got Xabi Alonso, who, with very obvious and direct connections to Liverpool Football Club, was a great manager, you have to say, with Bayer Leverkusen. Didn't work for him in El Bernabeu, the Bernabeu, whatever you want to call it, at Real Madrid. So he's currently without work. I think with him, there's maybe a little bit the same association that you perhaps get with what's happened with a Thomas Frank, what's happened with Ruben Amorim, what's happened with Erik ten Hag. Where am I going with that? Managers who've done well with ideally what you might describe as smaller clubs, less sexy clubs, then they get the promotion to the big gig, and it doesn't happen for them. And just like it didn't happen for him in Real Madrid, in reality, is he going anywhere near Old Trafford? No, not even remotely possible. So put a line through him, I would politely suggest. Same price, and I said you forget that some of these guys exist. Maurizio Pochettino, who took Spurs to a Champions League final, don't forget, in 2019. Is he, the former Southampton and Spurs manager, coming to Old Trafford? I really doubt it. But what the bookies describe as a pony 25 to 1 is a bloke who's currently in work in England in the Premier League and has steered a team recently to a utterly thrilling, captivating, brilliant 4-4 draw at Old Trafford. His team, with the smallest ground in the Premier League and probably the smallest budget, but the biggest overperformers, are currently 9th in the British top flight. And that's Andoni Iraola, who, again, none of this is a perfect fit, because how does his style of play and communication translate to Old Trafford? Again, perhaps you boys are better placed to work on that and develop that. His English isn't brilliant. The Old Trafford job, we know, is not just a spotlight. I mean, it's the biggest role on the biggest stage in global football. And all of a sudden, I mean, it's a circus. How would he thrive in that? I don't know. I really like him. I think at 25 to 1, he's much better value than either Xabi Alonso or Mauricio Pochettino. And then at even bigger odds, some of these, I won't even bore you, but Xavi, 33 to 1, Eddie Howe, 33 to 1, Marco Silva, 33 to 1. And I will just say, before I stop talking, because I know odds aren't everybody's thing, and some people will be saying, yawn, get this guy off. Kieran McKenna is 40 to 1, and next to him in the betting at 50 to 1 is a certain Ole Gunnar Solskjaer, who, before you all just say, be quiet, let's not forget that, cast your minds back to December 29th, you can construct a pretty cast iron argument that United's most thrilling football post-Ferguson is the quick transitional game from defence to attack, the likes of Rashford, Lingard, Anthony Martial, quickly spinning the ball from the defence, from opposition attack, under that quick transitional counter-attacking play. Who was the dynamic duo in charge? It was Ollie, and we talk about Carrick and Steve Holland. Well, it was Ollie and McKenna. Just imagine if they paired those two up again. We like to reminisce as United fans. Sometimes it's all we've got. But at 50 to 1 Ollie and 40 to 1 McKenna, they definitely deserve a mention. Over and out.
Well, I was looking at Oddie's face in particular during that, and I'm now seeing Jimmy grinning his head off. You look crestfallen at the very suggestion, Oddie. I have to say as well that I went on the average top 10. So you've mentioned people there I didn't do an infographic for, which is very upsetting. However, I have to finish this off with this guy who is also reasonably, certainly in the company you're talking about, and the complete binary opposite probably of Solskjaer. And that would be upsetting. We'll get to who you would like and who you wouldn't like at the end. But I also have not heard mention of Carlo Ancelotti yet, and maybe I'm wrong in that. But at one point he was at Everton and must have been available, which seems mad to me. I mean, at one point post Ferguson he was at Everton. No offense to Everton.
The only point about him and of course we all as United fans love that picture of him smoking the cigar after yet another thumping victory in a Champions League final to deny Liverpool a certain quadruple. So that's a great picture, and that's one we all glean great pleasure from maybe it was 2022, I think. But Don Carlo, for all that he is one of the true aristocrats of European football, he must be about 110. Is he really going to come back to England from Brazil and a World Cup and say, yeah, I'll do 2 years in Manchester? Surely at some point, even the very best have to hang up their boots. So 20 to 1, no thank you, with respect to, unlike the Southgate equation where you say, well, just no. Ancelotti, brilliant. And 5 or 10 years ago, an emphatic yes. 2026, Ancelotti United, struggle to see it.
Jimmy, do you know anything about the recruitment process?
I've hired people. I've been hired. So yes, Andy hired me once. We don't need to go into details, but you know, that says a lot about his judgment. So
that makes me sound really important.
But it was all legitimate.
You are, mate. You are.
Do you know anything about how they're looking for places? Because how they're looking for a new manager? Because I asked AI if it would come up with a kind of a managerial race based on the list as a cartoon. Would you like to see it?
Oh, well, I think the answer to that is yes. Oh, wow.
Yeah, and it stops there. But what struck me about it was that Del Bosque seems to be in the mix there. I'd be very surprised if he came out of retirement at the age of 75. Okay, then. So taking my top 10 then, which is from the average odds, and I will bring this up just as full screen so you can see it. What I want to go around and who's your top as purely as a United fan, not what's the most likely necessarily, but I'll start with you, Oddie. Who would be the one you would most want, and who would be the one you would least want out of the list that I'll get to when I learn how to work this computer properly, which should be about now? Carrick's obviously favourite, isn't he?
I think Enrique, like Jimmy, is my preference. I don't see it happening. I feel like he's destined for City. It seems like Guardiola is currently in the process of trying to get himself out of City, and know. It just seems like an obvious replacement for him. The one that's not been mentioned that I find quite interesting and I do like is Inzaghi. Like 2 years ago, he seemed to be the main name in European football and the one that was the most sought after. And suddenly he just doesn't get mentioned at all. He obviously worked wonders with Inter Milan, and I think he'd probably be up for it and available. So he's someone that I'd quite like to see. A few of them are obviously at the World Cup. Logistically, I just don't know how that will work because realistically, they're probably not going to start till the start of August, and we're pretty much in the season then. So, yeah, my preference is Enrique. Inzaghi is the sort of the dark horse. Absolutely do not want Gareth Southgate under any under any situation, really.
Jimmy, best and worst?
To be honest, I can't help but replicate what Andy's just said. I know it's a bit boring for the audience, but Enrique would be the number one choice and Southgate the worst of them. There's just two other names that we haven't mentioned, and I don't want to. This conversation could go on forever. There's enough managers out there, but Emery at Villa and Marco Silva to a degree at Fulham. I don't think even those are my top, above Enrique, but they're just two other names. I think the thing was with Emery, he's done a great job at Villa, I think, personally. I think the hangover from his time at Arsenal is an issue because he couldn't quite do it at Arsenal. So you think, well, he can't quite do it at United either. It's a bigger club. So yeah, same answers as Andy, I'm afraid, mate. Those are my final answers.
You've made your position on who you don't want it to be quite clear, Tom, I think. Anything else to finish off on who you do?
Yeah, I think I would say in terms of integration, in terms of contact, connections, comfort, ease of adaptability, in terms of not having to go through another cycle of upheaval recruitment. Let's not forget when I loved Louis van Gaal, but as fans, we've got very short memories. In the summer of 2014, as if this had never been done before and it was the most revolutionary thing in football, he came in, and you'll remember this really happened. He came in and he said, I know how to turn United round. We're going to plant some trees on the training ground to make sure that there isn't a wind blowing across Carrington. You remember that? They planted trees at Carrington. So all these guys come in, they want to make their mark. They want to put in some way, some sort of unique touch. So therefore, I would work in betting order. I would keep Michael Carrick. I would absolutely bust a gut to make sure he's got good people around him. He's a Rolls Royce of a former club midfielder. He has the confidence of the current setup. He's only just getting going. He did a good job at Middlesbrough, and he appears to have a good support network, and he's respected by all and sundry at all levels of a massive organisation. Therefore, I'd leave Carrick in situ. He'd be my number one. In betting order, I would give Glasner a chance if it wasn't Carrick. Then I'd go Enrique. I know you asked for one. I'm going to give you five, but in this order: Carrick, Glasner, Enrique. I said I love to reminisce. The thought of Ollie and McKenna having another shot would be glorious to me anyway. And I really like Andoni Iraola. So if he turned up at some point, that wouldn't trouble me at all. So that's a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. But personally, at 4 to 7 and now 10 to 11, depending on which odds you want to grab, I'd leave it with Carrick.
Lovely. We never mentioned De Zerbi, and I know that he hasn't been approached, if that's an exclusive, when he's outside odds anyway. And I think Big Sam's 125, so it might be worth a quid. Who knows? I think what we've learned, gents, is just prepare in advance so I can have the slides, really. I can have everything ready. Thank you all for your contributions. That was wonderful. I hope it's been informative. That's been your bonus episode of Creamer Manchester. Email us if you want, creamermanchester1878@gmail.com. Follow us on all the socials. If you're the person who's been trying to feed us Bitcoin, we're very, very appreciative of that. It has been anonymous, but if we find out who you are, we're going to send you a special bonus episode of this bonus episode that has Tom's tracks and my tracks removed. So you've just got Hoddy and Jimmy, and from that you'll be able to work out which one of them was coughing throughout the episode. We're doing this for free. We just ask you to subscribe to our YouTube channel and like our videos. That way we might keep it going. Thanks again. Mind the trams.